China Über Alles is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito, coming soon to the Capitola Mall food court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum! Well, good afternoon. I'm Bill Graff. Welcome to China Über Alles. I'm here with my co-host Nan Su, a senior reporter from the Epoch Times, and Amy Howe, a survivor of the re-education camps of the Chinese Cultural Revolution under Chairman Mao. We'll turn our attention first to our reporter in the fold. Nan is back in the studio this week. Hello, sir. How are you?
That's great. Everyone, we're going to have great program and great guests today. First of all, the latest survey shows that Americans have America's perception of U.S. greatest enemy as China shoot up all the way to 45%, while Russia has been down to 26%. So, many of you probably already know that the negotiating from both United States and China are meeting today in Alaska. So we're going to talk about how that negotiation goes. And also we have a great guest today, the famous author Gorden Chang, China expert. Now, Bill, would you introduce a little bit about the background of Gorden Chang?
Gorden Chang is a person, he's considered a conservative columnist, a blogger, television pundit. He's an author and a lawyer. He was educated at Cornell University, his BA and Juris Doctor from there. He also has lived in China. He lived and worked in mainland China and Hong Kong for almost 20 years, and most recently in Shanghai. He has appeared before the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, among others. He has warned the world that Chinese students attending U.S. colleges and universities have become the long arm of Chinese totalitarianism, that students, professors, and scientists have become non-traditional collectors of intelligence for China, and he has warned the world about that. He also wrote a book which the title of which is sort of says it all. He is the author of The Coming Collapse of China. Since the year 2001, Chang has repeatedly said that the Chinese government would eventually collapse. So we'll be talking about all of this with Mr. Chang later on in our program. First, though, we get to check in, as we do every week, to begin our program with Amy Howe. Amy, of course, has first-hand stories of what it's like to live under communism, and we welcome Amy to our program. How are you this week?
Very good. And I think I'm continuing the story I left last week.
Yes.
So the last time, I refresh everybody's memory a little bit, is the person, and I went to the re-education camp together. His name is Missile. And so 5 of us left over. You know, they didn't accept us, went to the only chance to the college. And so on the Chinese New Year's Eve, he coming to the village. We had dinner together, and then he said to me, he wanted to suggest that 5 of us should get together and have a group suicide. So that will call the attention of the government and protest the injustice. And so I told him, I said that, you know, it doesn't work because they only hurt the people love you. And it doesn't matter. And not going to do anything for the people. They don't care about you. And we are the people, and they call the children of the class enemy, and so they don't care about us. So they would not care we live or dead. And so I told him that so I give the example, and lots of good people, and during the Cultural Revolution, they all commit suicide. And the people I know, people I love, and nothing gonna changing. So, but he still think about suicide thoughts, and he think, those villagers, those people, and they love us, and they probably will feel bad. Of course, they feel sad, when people love, but the government, the CCP, and the people reach others, they don't care, So we're exchanging the story, its experience, and the attempt the suicide. How do we overcome that? So I told him, I thought about that, serious think about that. It's the first time. So I was 13, then 1966, the Cultural Revolution started. So when I saw the red guy beating a teacher in front of me, and also follow, and they want me to write the big post put on my door, I didn't do it. So they coming into my house, and then force me to denounce my parents and beat them up and tie us up. And that night, is a miracle, and I just survived, didn't beat to death. So after that, for a long time, and I don't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to commit suicide because I think there's nothing for me. There's no hope. When you were 13 years old, when you feel overnight and from your fantasy world or coming to the reality, and there's nothing for you. It's no future, nothing. And so what's the reason for you to live, right? So I just seriously think about it. I wanted to some way out. So I saw and they have those people that time to recruit, right now the Uyghur, those people live at the Xinjiang province. They're coming to recruit Shanghai, and the students go there. Basically, the CCP wanted to changing the racial balance, they say that, because they think over there, all the minority, the Uyghurs, so they want to changing that. So they coming to recruit the people. So I even went to their office, and I say, I want to go, because I just want to get away somewhere, and to start my life, maybe have some chance. And so they just laughed at me because they say, well, little girl, what are you going to do over there? You're only 13 years old. We don't need people like that. So they sent me back. So I think I really know where to go. So I just not thinking seriously. And every day I come home and somebody commits suicide in the quarter I live. So that thought, I never can get away that. Also, I see some are same as my age, the kids, and commit suicide. Mostly, they all very serious kids, So my father found out that, so he I was probably not want to live or something. So he think he had to help me. And also he think one of the states they're going to talk me away from him. He cannot protect me. And so he should have give me something like the vaccinations for me to, protect myself and have a will to live in this harsh environment. So he told me, he said that you like to read. I said, of course. My mother always called me a bookworm because I can read a book without eating or sleep and to finish the whole book. So my father said, I want you to read something. It's not for kids and it's for adults. Are you ready to do that? I said, of course, anything. And they said, I want to read the Chinese history. And I said, entire history? He said, yeah. I said, how many books I have to read? He said, doesn't matter. You have to start somewhere. And from when beginning, they have the story. And that was 700 BC. And those story. And they read until the latest dynasty, Qing dynasty. And they have three rulers, those stories. So he just gave me the book. I started reading. It's difficult because the language, the Chinese language in those books is classic. Just like English right now, you don't read those words in Shakespeare. You know, they use this word, it's the words all dead, never use it. So I can guess. So, you know, I just, maybe lots of words. My father told me, so don't stuck in the words you don't recognize. Just read the entire sentences, so just to guessing what the meaning is. So I started reading. I just fascinated me. I just don't want to eat. I don't want to sleep. I have to finish the book. And I read all the histories, everything. And then my father told me, he said, oh, what do you think now? Compare the history, what they've been through. And right now, I said, well, lots of things happened before. So it's not, it's a tragedy. But that's, you know, entire history, 5,000 years, we've been through so many of those things. So right now, we just, in one of a kind of, you know, period, we had to go through this. And they say, well, that's right. But after that, now you know what's happened is never happened before. But I still want you to learn how to dealing with that. I remember just last week, I think Billy said something. You say that depend on, you know, what kind of philosophy and you use and to think about those things happening to us, right? So it's true. So he introduced me to further reading those philosophy. And so Chinese have so many of those different philosophers write those books. So I started reading those things. So after that, I think it's true, you know, depend on how you think. If lots of people think it's a tragedy, maybe, you know, the bad things will lead to the good things. So the philosophy, how you to dealing with, how you to explaining the things happening is so important. So you're not gonna, you know, chasing a dead end. And so you're not gonna commit suicide. And so you know how to dealing with. So I told this, my experience to the missile. So I tried to talk him out of those thoughts. But he seems like, he said, well, I know you like history, you like philosophy. He said, I don't like any of it there. He said, I like science. I want to be Einstein. I said, well, I know. I said, I don't know much about the science and the Einstein, but the one thing I know, he has this relativities. Relativities also is a philosophy. Everything is related, right? He said, that's true. I said, well, think about it. Lots of things that you say that it's bad, it's good, whatever, are related to what you will determine is bad or good. He said, well, you're right. I said, yeah. I said, you think science is not philosophy? Actually, it's philosophy too. Philosophy also is a science. And so we exchanging our ideas, everything. So seems like we talk about until midnight. So next morning, he back to the project. So he said, well, he said, you know, I feel much better. And he said, well, you never know what's going to happen to us. He said, today we sit here because that time in Yunnan province, earthquake a lot, big earthquake. Sometimes some whole town would disappear like a Pompeii. And he said, you never know. Maybe we're sitting here and the next day we were in America. I said, earthquake shake us down way below us. I said, wow, it may be just true. I said, but that time we never think about we have any chance, you know, to America. But at least we joked. And so we feel like, you know, maybe we had to wait and maybe have other opportunities. So at least not to go to this group suicide idea. And but that's I'm talking. But I don't know. I believe. I think from that point, also he told me about his tragic stories, and his father was engineer, and but somehow they found out that his what I call the father, the grandpa have landowners, so they call landlords. And so they make him as a class enemy during the Cultural Revolution. And also, it's just like me, they want your kids to denounce your parents. So they make him to denounce his father. He's the only son in the family. And also, I think his parents was in the, probably after 50, finally get him, So it's the older parents. And so he not just denounced him, they also forced him and to beat him up, tied him up and beat. And he did. He said that, that probably is the worst thing ever happened to him. Think about that. You had to force to beat up your father. And
wow.
Yeah, and so after that, his father probably 2 days later and hanged himself because he denounced him and they forced him to say, "You're not my father. I hate you. You are enemy," whatever that is. So the father couldn't bear it. He's the only son, and told him like that, denounced him. So he committed suicide. So that make him for very long time, I think, a really big hit. And so he been through that, he's not talking to anyone, not talking to his mother, everything else. And he just couldn't forgive himself. He thought that he killed his father directly. So anyway, I think that's make a bigger impact and on his mental status. It left the scar forever. So, after that, lots of years passing by, eventually, probably 3 months later, I got a chance to go to the Kunming, which was the capital of the Yunnan province, the engineering school, because that teacher coming down, and he helped me because he said his father also is a class enemy. So he understands my situation. So he prepared 2 applications. And he said that if the local government didn't let you go and to replace officers' children, he said, I still have another one. I will tell the school in Kunming and to accept you. So at least, to guarantee you that have this quarter for you. And so he helped me actually successfully and went to that. Probably 6 months later, Missile also get a chance. I think there's another university in Sichuan province. And they was a branch of a Shanghai University. So they went coming down 6 months later, and so they accepted him. So it's not exactly, I wanted to go to medical school or something. And because, when the conversation, I asked him, I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to be a rocket science. And asked me what I want to do. I said, I was interested in neuroscience. So that's what our original dream, right? But they didn't let me to go to medical school or anything. I just ended up in the mechanical engineering, which was I never even think about wanted to learn. And then I think he go to some kind of a chemistry, high poly chemistry or something, to study, they gather those material from the rubber tree and make like a plastic kind of thing. And anyway, after that, and he was very successful in the school, and he becoming a professor in that school. And eventually, and because his mother still in Shanghai alone, and so he applied to go back to taking care of the mother. And he left the university and landed a job in Shanghai. And then eventually he opened his own company because he had some kind of inventions or something, because he's a very smart guy. And so after that, so basically the pretty successful story, he becoming, have his own company and everything else. I think I had to continue the story because running out of time today. And then after that, another twist happened to his life. And so I will continue next week.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you, Amy. Your stories are. We'll find out in a few minutes how close what Amy's talking about contemplating suicide because things are so bad. We'll talk about how that relates to our guest in just a moment. We do have on the line our scheduled guest for today, Gorden G Chang. Gorden, as I mentioned at the top of the show, is a columnist, a blogger, a television pundit. He's an author and a lawyer. He's widely known for the book The Coming Collapse of China, which he wrote in 2001. He graduated from Columbia High School in Maplewood, New Jersey in 1969. He then, 4 years later, graduated from Cornell University. He was a member of the Quill and Dagger Society there. He graduated with a Juris Doctor degree from Cornell Law School. He has worked and lived in mainland China and Hong Kong. He did so for almost 20 years, most recently in Shanghai. He's really quite accomplished, and we are so happy to have Mr. Chang with us today. Let me make sure I push the right button here. Mr. Chang, thank you for being with us today. We greatly appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Mr. Chang, we have three hosts here, Nan Su and Billy, and Amy Howe. We always host the show all together. Welcome to our show today. We know that the negotiation team from both United States and China are meeting today in Alaska. Tell us, what do you expect the kind of result, and what do you think they're going to talk about today?
Yeah, most everybody, including the Chinese side, have talked about how nobody's really going to make concessions. China's really rolled into Anchorage to tell the United States what the terms of the relationship will be going forward. The United States has a very different view of the terms of the relationship, so there's going to be an exchange of views, but that's, I think, pretty much it. I don't see progress as most people would define it, largely because the differences on both sides are so fundamental.
Wow. Now, Mr. Chang, you're the highly respected China expert. I know back in the beginning, just a few weeks ago, Beijing sent a message to our State Department. They requested three things. Number one, asking United States to stop delisting Chinese companies from Wall Street. Number two, stop asking United States to stop punishment of China's high-tech company like Huawei and Zhongxin. And number three, asking United States to cut down the tariffs which was imposed to the goods importing from China by Trump administration. Do you think the Chinese negotiation team will re-emphasize these 3 points?
I think that largely the conversation will be on a broader level. At some point it might get down to specific issues, but I don't see that there's going to be any substantive discussion of those, largely because both sides have said that they want to set the parameters of the relationship going forward. Now, of course, the Chinese would like a lot of things, and a lot of those things that you just mentioned, but I don't think that we're going to see that this time.
Mr. Chang, do you think that China is emboldened at all with the way world politics are? I mean, we see their military buildup. We see their thoughts and ideas about Taiwan and about maybe trying to bring Taiwan back into the fold altogether and eliminating its independent status. We've seen the same thing with Hong Kong. Are they emboldened to the point where they don't really care what the rest of the world thinks?
I think that's a good interpretation. Xi Jinping is a tough guy. He believes that he can do what he wants. And if you listen to elite voices in Beijing, especially after the 2020 election, they thought that they could push Biden around. So they're pretty confident these days. One could even say they're arrogant. And therefore, I don't think we're going to have very much in the way of give on their point, because they don't think they have to give very much, if anything at all.
Let me follow that up before I let Amy ask the next question. She can't see us, so I have to sort of tell her she's up next. Let me ask you this. The current Secretary of State stated that the United States position was that they were going to, at least in the beginning of the current administration, to continue what Mr. Pompeo and the last president set up, which was a kind of a hardline stance with China. Do you think China believes that?
I don't know what they believe, but I do believe that in terms of certain issues, we're going to see a continuation from the Trump administration. On January 19th, the Secretary of State Pompeo, last full day in office, issues a determination that China is committing genocide. And we have heard the State Department in the Biden administration confirm that determination. And that really creates certain consequences. It boxes the administration in, because the United States is a party to the 1948 Genocide Convention, which requires signatories to, quote, prevent and punish acts of genocide. And that means that there is very little the U.S. can do in terms of compromising with China on certain issues, especially with regard to the Uyghurs, Tibetans, the Kazakhs. So I see that continuing.
Amy?
Yes, it's an honor to have you in our program, Mr. Chen. I think actually should be Zhang Xiansheng, 是吧?
Well, it's an honor
because they always lost in translation. Should be Zhang, right? Okay. I read your books. Couple of books. It's very impressive, your view of the China. Especially, I was born in Shanghai, lived in China for 30 years, and I really know about the CCP, what about it. And so your point of view in the book is, I 100% agree with you. Now, the book in 2020 about the Cold War and high tech, and that issues, you think I know when during the Trump administration, and we are really, range another Cold War, the real war with China, especially the high-tech part. We have the long list for those people, the entity list. So you think during right now, the Biden administration, they're gonna continuing the war, become a Cold War, or lukewarm, or what are they gonna do? They really gonna reset everything, and like those companies, Huawei and Zhongxin. So we're gonna back to the business as usual, or what?
Well, I wish I knew the answer to your question. The Biden administration is in this top-to-bottom review of China policy, and I think part of it is going to be dependent on what is said in Anchorage today and tomorrow. But there's certain continuities, because the Biden team knows that tech, for instance, is an area of enduring competition with China. And although Gina Raimondo, who is the now U.S. Commerce Secretary, she waffled during her confirmation proceedings on Huawei, I think that she now understands that the U.S. has got to keep Huawei on the Commerce Department's entity list. That's the list of companies that Americans can't do business with without getting a license from Commerce. So I do see a lot of continuity there.
Mr. Chan, in the past couple of weeks, our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, has repeatedly saying that China has not lived up to what they promised ever since they joined WTO. Now, if they have not lived up to what they promised as their commitment, what's the point of making this conversation in Alaska? I mean, if they have not been living up to what their commitment was about for the past 20 years, why we're counting on them to make another kind of a promise? So we will give back some certain things as a result of a negotiation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more because I don't see anything coming out of this that is going to be enduring. I think the one thing, though, is that our allies and friends and partners want to see an attempt to come to terms with China. So even though it is futile, there is going to be these discussions to at least show that the United States was reasonable. But I agree with you. I don't see how China can make fundamental compromises. It's just not in the nature of the system. And it's my belief that we will resolve our fundamental differences with China only when the People's Republic of China fails or the U.S. government is overthrown. It's one of those two things. There's only going to be one survivor. This is a zero-sum game, and it's going to continue until one of these two countries fails.
Now, talking about the failure of China, you recently had an article published talking about China cannot feed itself. China does not produce enough food, including rice or meat. How do you see this factor? This is a crucial factor for the survival of China if they cannot feed itself, and what's going to play out as a result if the whole country, with 1.4 billion people is hungry? How is this going to impact the relationship between China and the countries around and also the Western world?
I think essentially what's going to happen is that China's going to have to buy more and more food from its neighbors, from the United States, from countries around the world, and that's going to mean that there's going to be less money for it to do the things it wants to, like build up its military, Belt and Road, whatever. So this is going to be a limiting factor. And China's food crisis is only going to get worse. 2020 was a really bad year when it came to self-sufficiency for a number of reasons. A number of those reasons are going to continue being factors, which means that China is going to be less and less food self-sufficient. And that's a problem. Great powers have got to feed themselves, and we've seen this throughout history. China's becoming less and less food sufficient, and that's going to be a limiting factor in what they can accomplish.
Mr. Chang, let me
Mr. Chang.
Go ahead, Amy.
Okay. Yeah, talk about the food. I was sent during the Cultural Revolution and sent to the farm and was far away and near the Burma border from 1969 to 1979. And so after 50 years, I visiting Yunnan province, but never go to the village. But a lot of my schoolmates, they went there, and they say that it's strange things happening, because in that village, that time we have 3 rice crop a year, and now they say that nobody farming. I say, how can farmers don't farming? What do they do? They say that, well, they buying the food from the Thailand or Burma, the rice, but they use the land and to build some buildings and make like a tourism destination. And I say, what a farmer, what do they do? Say they become a construction worker. and they are building some like a Buddhism church, temples, and some are building the housings, and so they don't farm. I say, well, 1.4 billion people. If farmers, they don't farming, and what are they going to eat? Because that's kind of number one problem, just like an article you talk about that. So I don't know. Right now, seems like for a while when Trump administration, and we say that, we had to have a fair trade. So we have some kind of limitation, censors for their agriculture products. But then now they back to normal, and they like export more. So they're still buying pork, buying rice, everything else. So this, your article make me thinking it will take how long for China to survive and to buying the food from cannot feed themselves. So maybe that will causing a revolution if people don't have a food.
Well, yes, and food self-sufficiency is, as I mentioned, they're going to become less and less self-sufficient for one of the reasons you mentioned, which is that they're taking land out of the agricultural domain, and they're building all sorts of things, factories, your tourist destination you talked about, and everything else. Plus, they've got a water scarcity problem and all the rest of it. We don't really think about this, but if you go back to the Great Leap Forward, somewhere between 30 and 60 million people or so died from starvation. So food security is especially important in every country, but especially in China. And that means that this has become a much bigger issue for them than it would be for us. And you also mentioned pork. They had African swine fever, which decimated between 2018 and 2020. They had to kill more than half of their pork population. So this has really been a serious thing. And that's why Chinese leaders, they talk about how they're self-sufficient in food, but we know that they're not, because 2020 was a disaster from that viewpoint.
Now, do you think, Mr. Chang, do you think that this situation China finds itself in, not being able to really feed itself, is it possible that would make them, would embolden them on the world stage to, claim more territory and try to actually go to war to feed themselves?
I think that's a real possibility. Chinese leaders, as Henry Kissinger tells us, look to the past for successful tactics. And one of those is you go back to the Warring States period where the Qin actually unified China, as they say. The way they did that was they waged war on smaller neighbors to get their farmland so they could feed their armies to go after their bigger rivals. And so that is something that I'm sure is in the back of the mind of Xi Jinping. For us, it might seem inconceivable, but for a country that can't feed itself, which looks at Russia and all of that land over there, which looks at Tajikistan, it could very well be something that they try to do.
Now, Mr. Chen, one thing in my mind is you're expert on China's economy. China has been trying to, because they have so much overproduction on the cement, on steel, but they overbuild so much on the roads, bridges, and public facilities. Now they really try to expand that part so they can, have keep the hiring, keep job opportunities for their own people. And that's the reason they go out to have this Belt and Road project. Now, if their economy is going down, they cannot feed their own people. Do you think how far they can still keep going for this Belt and Road project?
Yeah, Belt and Road, I think, never was well conceived if they looked at it as an infrastructure project, and largely because they were building stuff that the private sector would not touch. China's building some infrastructure which is not viable from an economic point of view because they want to have military bases from a strategic point of view, but it costs money to do that, and so therefore, it's another call on their resources. they can build more military bases, they can do this or they can do that, but they can't do everything, and largely because their economy won't give them the resources to achieve all of their ambitions. So I think the Chinese leaders see a closing window of opportunity. They've got to get going while the going is good, and they realize that because of reasons of poor economy, because of food self-sufficiency, because of demographics, they've got to achieve their ambitions now rather than later.
So, Mr. Chen, I realize because Chinese, they always have a lot of large propaganda to everything. So you hard to tell and what they're doing. But from your book, I think you really know what's inside. And so what do you think right now so economy, they try to do this digital money. So they think they can successfully and replace the U.S. dollar? Entire Western system?
That's the one thing they can't do. And the reason is that in order to replace the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency, they've got to have a currency which is completely convertible. It's convertible on the current account, but it's not convertible on the capital account, which means you can't repatriate capital out of China without permission. It's just not possible to have the reserve currency that is so restricted. So I don't worry about that. As a matter of fact, usage of the renminbi has been declining recently. It's in the low single digits, in terms of global usage. So that's one thing that we don't have to worry about.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that's good news. Gorden, let me ask you this. I'm concerned about about China's influence around itself, and I wonder about North Korea. And I wonder about China reclaiming Hong Kong as an international and economic trading center, and I kind of worry about Taiwan. Although Taiwan technically has been part of China all along here, at least legally, it is acting kind of as its own country and has been for many years now. Do you see China's influence in that region? Do you see them trying to, prop up the North Korean government and help them along? Does that relationship continue or does its internal problems sort of overshadow what they're trying to do in other countries?
Well, with regard to North Korea, China, especially during the last 18 months or so, has been more openly violating sanctions, UN sanctions, U.S. sanctions. So they are defiant on helping North Korea. And I think that will continue because they see North Korea as useful for creating all sorts of problems that ties up Japan, South Korea, and the United States. And it also gives reason for the United States to seek China's cooperation, trying to get help on North Korea, and China then uses that as leverage to get what it wants on other issues. And indeed, we heard Secretary Blinken just a few hours ago talk about China trying to get China to help on North Korea. But in terms of its other things that you mentioned, Hong Kong is going to be a continuing problem for China. And Taiwan is moving further and further away from China. So I don't think that they're going to see very much success on Taiwan. They say that they must annex it within 5 years. I just don't see that happening.
Now, Mr. Chen, you talk about the Biden administration seems moving towards the direction rely on China to solve the denuclearization of North Korea. Now, I think that it's going back to the same way under Obama administration trying to handle the nuclear issues of North Korea. I've seen that Trump administration really take hard position against both China and North Korea, and he has been pretty successful. Now, by going back to the Obama administration's strategy, relying on China to solve the nuclear issues in North Korea, do you think they're going to be successful in that way?
Yeah, I don't know what the Biden policy on North Korea will be. I don't think they even know what it is in the White House. But, you're right. Under Trump, he did not look to China to help North Korea. Matter of fact, I think the thrust of his policy was to separate North Korea from China. But that is very much in contrast to what you point out, and that is, of course, that the Obama years and George W. Bush policy of the United States was to look to China for help on North Korea. And so I think you're absolutely right about that. What Biden will do, I don't know, but I'm afraid that they'll go back to that failed approach of asking for Beijing's help, because Beijing has not been constructive on North Korea. It's been a villain on this, and we should recognize it as such. And indeed, we should be sanctioning China for its blatant violations of sanction rules.
Amy?
Mr. Chang, one more question about the Taiwan. Recently, I have some friends, they're representing the people you live in the United States or other countries investing in Taiwan. They are Chinese people, original from Taiwan. So according to them, they really believe the unification of China and Taiwan is good for both countries. Both places, let's say, because they say, we are Chinese. I think the real reason, because they have a lot of investment there. And they say that Taiwan's economy, basically for last 20 years, very much tied with China, mainland China, almost everything. And then, as I know, it's the real truth is that even the Taiwan college graduate, they had to go to mainland China to looking for jobs because nothing there. And so I was thinking about, lots of things happen, like North Korea and South Korea, and before North Vietnam and South Vietnam. You really think American policy should involve with that? Because we have a problem with the Vietnam. We know that. And we had to learn about it, because it took then almost a century and to realize the communism doesn't work. And it's bad for them, right? But right now, Taiwan people, they never be in the communist control, those peoples, I think. So they're still very naive. I don't know naive what, but they have the financial interest. So they think that's Chinese people's problem. So Americans shouldn't even bother with. So what do you think?
Most people in Taiwan don't identify themselves as Chinese. When we look at self-identification surveys, they've been consistent, where you have somewhere between 65 to 75% view themselves as Taiwanese only, and the number that view themselves as Chinese only is usually somewhere between 5 and 12%. So it is as a matter of culture, regardless of the economics. But as a matter of culture, I think that Taiwan doesn't see itself as part of the People's Republic. And we've got a very graphic demonstration of this in 2019 when Tsai Ing-wen, the president, was so unpopular that she wasn't going to get the renomination of her party to run for a second term. But after we saw what China did in Hong Kong, people in Taiwan not only gave Tsai Ing-wen the nomination, they elected her in the general election overwhelmingly. And that's because of what China was doing in Hong Kong. So I think that essentially whatever people want to do in terms of business, they still want their own country in Taiwan, and they're not going to give it up just because they can make a few dollars more by being a formal part of the People's Republic.
Mr. Chang, I hate to say...
I always told them, say, Hong Kong's today, that's Taiwan tomorrow, if you believe you want to be a... Yes. Communist China.
That's the phrase. That is the phrase.
Mr. Chang, I hate to do this. We've just simply run out of time. Perhaps we can have you back on our program again to talk more about this. It is such a large topic, and you are so knowledgeable. I can only hope that we can get another visit from you on our program.
I would love to. It would be an honor for me to do that. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's our pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us on China Uber Alice. We'll be right back. We have to take our one and only break this hour, and we'll be back in just a moment. China Uber Alice is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito, coming soon to the Capitola Mall food court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum!
Hi, this is Joe Cordell with the law firm Cordell & Cordell. When the prospect of divorce becomes a reality, you need a partner that you can count on. If you're a man in this situation, consider contacting Cordell & Cordell. We've helped men navigate complex legal matters for 30 years.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's California attorneys. Online at CordellCordell.com. That's CordellCordell.com. 1455 Frazee Road, Suite 500, San Diego, California, 92108.
Coast Paper and Supply is a local, family-owned supply business right here in Santa Cruz since 1948. They've been proudly serving the Central Coast through this COVID-19 pandemic. Sanitation is a serious concern during this pandemic, and Coast Paper and Supply is open to offer you the widest selection of janitorial supplies to be found anywhere. With their excellent selection of quality products and customer service, discover why many local businesses, schools, and households choose to shop at Coast Paper and Supply. You can find Coast Paper and Supply at 151 Josephine Street in Santa Cruz, open weekdays 8 to 4 p.m. Or you can give them a call at 831-423-3350. You can also check out their website at coastpapersupplyinc.com. That's Coast Paper and Supply, keeping local businesses and households supplied since 1948.
Satisfy your hunger with a fresh, prepared, twice daily grab-and-go sushi you'll find waiting for you at Sushi Market Sprouts, 2 blocks from the beach at 300 7th Avenue in Santa Cruz. Fresh, delicious, and oh so good.
Hello, I'm Junko, and I look forward to serving you at the Sushi Market Sprouts.
Well, we're just about done with this hour of China Uber Alice. We want to remind you that you can hear our program on our website, ChinaUberAlice.com. Go there. You'll hear all of our past programs and information. When we come back in our second hour, we'll be talking about many things, including the fact that China can't not feed itself. All predictions are that China is just not able to feed itself in the future.
Well, that's I'm not sure if it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. If they cannot feed themselves, maybe they will go out to threat the countries around them. Yeah, that's one thing really scare us.
All right, Amy, Anan and I will be back in just a moment on China Uber Alice. This is KSCO Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey. It's
breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters. President Biden and Vice President Harris plan to meet with Asian American community leaders in Georgia in the wake of this week's deadly shootings at 3 Atlanta area massage parlors. Atlanta Deputy Police Chief Charles Hampton Jr. says investigators believe shooting suspect Robert Aaron Long had visited the 2 Atlanta massage parlors where 4 women of Asian descent were killed.
I would just say that, unfortunately, they were at that location. I can't say that he specifically targeted those individuals. But what I will say is that he did frequent, as the question keeps coming up, that he did frequent those 2 locations within Atlanta.
4 other victims were killed at a spa in suburban Cherokee County shortly before the Atlanta attacks.
On this vote, the yeas are 50, the nays are 49. The nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the President will be immediately notified of the Senate's actions.
Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii announcing Senate approval of President Biden's choice for Health Secretary Javier Becerra. All Republicans, with the exception of Maine Senator Susan Collins, opposed the nomination. Becerra was criticized for his support for abortion while California Attorney General. Others were critical for him not being a doctor, but instead a lawyer. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says the U.S. is working on the mechanics of loaning millions of AstraZeneca vaccine doses to Canada and Mexico.
Our first priority remains vaccinating the U.S. population. The reality is the The pandemic knows no borders, and ensuring our neighbors can contain the virus is a mission-critical to ending the pandemic.
On Wall Street, the Dow down by 153 points, the Nasdaq plunged 409, the S&P lower by 58. More on these stories at townhall.com.
The coronavirus has changed our lives, and while trying to stay healthy, people are finding themselves working and shopping from home. Sometimes change offers opportunity, and this might be the perfect time to start your own home business. When you decide to work with Longevity as a distributor, you'll get wholesale pricing, training materials, and your own website, which Longevity will maintain and update so that you can work from home. Here's what you should expect. Pay the distributor fee online and get on auto ship for a healthy start pack. You'll get it delivered to your house every month with free shipping. When you do this, you'll be automatically qualified to make up to 30% commission on everything sold on your website. But you must maintain your auto ship to qualify, and these must be new customers. The next thing you'll need is consistent training and learning about the products and referring people to that shiny new website. Now you can work from home and they can shop from home. To learn more, log on to kseohealth.com or call 831-218-5726. That's 831-218-5726 or kseohealth.com.
Here's the townhall.com business brief.
The number of Americans seeking unemployment benefits rose last week to 770,000.
It's a sign that layoffs remain high, even as much of the U.S. economy is steadily recovering from the coronavirus recession. The Labor Department reports show that jobless claims climbed from 725,000 the week before. The numbers have dropped since the depths of the recession last spring, but still show that employers in some industries continue to lay off workers.
Correspondent Jeremy House. Before the pandemic struck, applications for unemployment aid had never topped 700,000 in any 1 week. Stocks finishing lower. The Dow lost 153 points to close at 32,862. The Nasdaq dropped 409 to 13,116. The S&P 500 off 58 to 3,915. New York oil fell $4.60, closing at $60 a barrel. With business, I'm John Scott.
News and analysis at townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The world is awaiting a decision from Europe's top medical regulator on whether its initial investigation into whether there's any evidence to show that AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine is linked to a small number of blood clots reported in people across the continent. Correspondent Zaria Shackley reports.
The European Medicines Agency's expert committee is set to announce the results of its investigation later on Thursday. Earlier this week, more than a dozen countries, including Germany, France, Spain and Italy, suspended immunization using the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine after reports of unusual blood clots in several people among the 17 million who have received at least one dose in Europe. Both the EMA and the World Health Organization have said there's no current evidence to suggest the vaccine was responsible and that the benefits of immunization far outweigh the potentially small risk of getting vaccinated. Zaria Shackley, London.
More on these stories at townhall.com.
KSCO News Talk time is 3:05. I'm Sam Quentin with your King of the Hill traffic and weather. Starting off with Highway 17 northbound right now through the Lexington Hills area. You're going to find very slow and go conditions northbound. Approximately 11 to 15 minute delay to get through that area. Someone called in to report that both lanes were closed down. I can't find any confirmation of that, but consequently, northbound 17, you're going to find yourself taking some extra time to get through. Highway 9 is clear. Highway 1 coming off the Fishhook all the way through to Capitola, you're going to find slow and go conditions there. That's about a 10-minute delay right now to get through that area. The rest of the way down Highway 1 to Monterey, that is currently accident-free and moving at the limit. Highway 101, big-time stuff going on there. Northbound 101 between River Oaks and Miller, you're going to find about a 21-minute delay to get through that area. And Highway 101 southbound between South Coyote and Madrone, Once again, about a 15-minute delay to get through that area. Your Central Coast forecast for the rest of this afternoon. Showers expected off and on. Looking for a high of 58 degrees. Calm winds south-southwest, 5 to 7 miles per hour. Right now, outside the KSCO studios, it is 53 degrees. Now, stay tuned. It's time for the second hour of China Uber Alice right here on KSCO.
China Uber Alice is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito, coming soon to the Capitola Mall food court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum! Once again, good afternoon. I'm Bill Graff. Welcome to China Uber Alice, our second hour. I'm here with my co-host Nan Su, the senior reporter from the Epoch Times, and Amy Howe, who's a survivor of the re-education camps of the Chinese Cultural Revolution under Chairman Mao. What a great first hour we just had with Mr. Gorden G Chang.
You know, Billy, what was the most impressive thing that during the last half hour of interview?
The fact that we got him? Well, he's very hard to book.
Yeah, it's very hard to book him, and he's very knowledgeable and China expert. Now, the things that really struck me is he said that's a zero-sum game. United States and China, eventually, it's going to be only one man standing. One is going down.
Yep. I picked up on that one too.
You know. Yes, Amy.
Who's going to dominate the 21st century? Who's going to be the dominant?
Well, it's a good question. I'm voting for the United States only because I've seen what we've managed. I've seen what we've managed to pull off in the past.
Now, we need to have a lot of changes to take place in this nation. Now, think about this. We are United States. It's a country about 250 years old.
Something like that.
Yeah, most of the country when they somewhere close to 300 years, it's a time to collapse. So we're seeing this many great challenges coming to this country and including China. So we need to do a lot of things to really sustain not to continually make successful of this country, but also really we need to make a huge change in our China policy in order for us to be able to deal with this new rising power.
I found something very fascinating in the news last night. I believe I was watching one of the Bay Area news stations, and they were talking about perceptions about China and Russia and the United States. Uh-huh. And I believe 51% of those people polled think China is the biggest threat.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that the survey too. Actually, it said 45% seeing China as the biggest enemy. Russia, it's down to 26%. North Korea, it's 9%.
So if you add all three of those countries together, that's who most of America's think is a threat.
Yeah, think it's a threat.
China and Russia and North Korea.
And China, comparing with last year's survey, shoot up 23%. Say last year, China was 22%. Americans see as a biggest enemy. Now it goes to 45%.
So I find it very interesting, Amy, that right now in Anchorage, Alaska, we are having a discussion with China, official discussions, the United States government, and yet our president, I believe it was this morning or last night, picked a fight with Vladimir Putin. Basically called him a thug. I mean, Yeah.
I remember we talked about this thing several times. If you pick China as an enemy, we probably potentially can separate Russia from China.
Right.
But if you pick Russia as an enemy, you just make two enemies. Actually, you make three: Russia, China, and North Korea all together.
North Korea.
You just bundle them all together.
Yeah, and
I just don't see why people would think of Russia and North Korea. I just don't know. How do they see these things? Do they ever look at China's economy powers?
Well, I think I think part of the answer to your question, Amy, is that Vladimir Putin has he has portrayed himself as the bad guy. He kind of likes being the bad guy, I think. I don't think Xi Jinping wants to be known as a bad guy. He wants to,
he wants to be a good emperor. Yeah.
Well, Xi Jinping, he had a good strategies to steal from the United States. Now, if you really look at this percentage as a survey, I think Americans are waking up.
Yeah.
They see the real threat from China.
Well, you know what I see? Here's one of the things that I got from the discussion with Mr. Chang today. I find it very interesting that most experts now believe China cannot feed itself. Well, look, there's some basic. Look, if you're raising kids, the first thing you think about is, okay, where's the child's next meal going to come from? Right? If you're a parent.
Yep.
Then you worry about, other stuff, but the first thing you worry about is, how am I going to feed my kids? So if you're looking at it from a country point of view, at least in my view, China is got a very big problem on its hands. And it would seem to me that if they couldn't figure out a way to feed their people any other way, then the last resort, at least in my view, would be, okay, we're going to take food from somebody else.
That's right.
So
yeah, and I'm still wondering. I think that next week probably Michael also going to talk about the big leap and lead to the big thing. Millions of people die in hunger in China. But I always wondering, even now I look back in 1960s, and millions of people die hungry to death. I mean, just starving. And how can still have no revolution?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, that's
I'm wondering about.
Well, it shows you, but then again, you're a perfect example of why people are afraid to rise up. All the stuff you went through.
Well, if you look again, just like Billy said some time ago, that if you look at all the countries under the control of communist regimes, their people never rise up.
Yeah,
I know. It's just it's hard to gather all the people together to make a joint effort. Number one, all the information are controlled by the government. If you are living in Santa Clara County, just like you're living in one county, right? You're living in one county in China, and then the people in the next county, they are really go to the street and protest. You don't even know. Maybe you will know that like 10 days later after things already quiet down.
Well, that's the beauty of censorship.
Another. You look at the history. Another bizarre thing is, to me, I can't figure out, is why those dictators, the evils, and never be assassinated. Think about Hitler, Stalin, Mao, right? Nobody tried to assassinate them. Why is that?
Well, I think the answer to that lies in North Korea. If you'll remember, when the current leader of North Korea was coming to power, he eliminated his own uncle because he saw him as a threat. So, hey, we'll take care of him right now. Get him out of the way, and that sets the example for anybody else who wants to think they might want to oppose him.
Well, those things always happen under the communist regime. There is no peaceful power transfer.
No, and that is what's what everybody says in the United States separates us from the rest of the world. Countries like us, when one leader's voted out, the next leader, the peaceful transfer of power. That's what separates us and England and a few other places. When they don't like a prime minister in Canada, they have a vote of no confidence, and the next thing you know, you got a new prime minister. Same thing in other countries.
That's the beauty of democracy.
Well, that's what they say. Now, we do have a caller. Fred in Santa Cruz has called in to talk to us today on China Uber House. Fred, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for taking my call, and all my respects for you guests there on the show. I like your show every Thursday. But, you just mentioned about polls as to which is our biggest enemy, China, Russia, or whatever. But I don't think that we have that big of a threat from China militarily. I think they're doing a great job giving us the rope to hang ourselves from over the past year especially. I think if you read the book by Solinsky, Rules for Radicals, I think we're doing a great job of putting socialism or communism, a form of government right now. We're seeing it in transition right now. And you just mentioned that one of the common things that a communist regime has is that the people don't rise up. Well, I don't see anybody rising up in this country from what I've seen transpire over the last year.
Well, that's a good point. I will say this though: when the United States population is pushed to a certain point, then we rise up and join together and seem to do it. World War II proved that. Even the people in this country that did not like the Vietnam War, we still were united amongst our government and everything else to do what the leadership of the country wanted to do at the time. We had a lot of protests, but we still sent people off to war. I think we might have the fight still in us.
Yeah, well, Fred, when you say you didn't see people rise up last year, what did you mean by that?
Well, let's take Black Lives Matter. Let's take Antifa. The other thing, I went to Nam, and I wasn't here to take part in all the demonstrations, but I look back at what occurred during the Vietnam War and the amount of demonstrations that took place. And I mean, we can talk about Kent University, but I don't think that our new generation today has demonstrated our intrusions into the Middle East. What we did to Syria and Afghanistan, Iran, and Yemen, and it's all for natural resources. That's why we're there. We've been there almost 20 years. I don't see the demonstrations.
Well, look, I guarantee you if China declared war on us, I'm pretty sure we would unite as a country pretty quickly.
Well, yes, that's a different paradigm, and I understand that, yes. But they don't have to do that. We're doing a great job ourselves of doing their dirty work. It's working.
Well, first of all, I think that there's just few. Last month we had one guest, Trevor Loden. Remember?
Oh yes.
Yeah, he talked about his investigation about the Black Lives Matter and who's behind that, and also the Antifa. And I think we do have people really pay attention to this stuff. And the reason is, you don't see many people really go out to the street against them. It's just, people stay away from those things.
What's really interesting about Antifa
I think that Frank
is who bankrolled them. And if you look at the Fortune 500, you'll find out who's bankrolling those movements. It's really embarrassing, but it's all your big high-tech industry, and you can start with Amazon and go straight on down. So I see high-tech marrying big government right now, and the confluence of the two is very strong. And I think what we're dealing with here is is the old Rockefeller Rothschild New World Order, which is not a New World Order. It's an old world order that started over 100 years ago. And I think that's what's threatening everybody.
Yeah, I think
China being a part of it.
Yeah, Frank, talking about they infiltrated to every field, especially in the school in the United States. So that's why the young generations have been brainwashed by the Chinese propaganda. So that's why.
Absolutely. I mean, they don't even educate civic classes anymore. They don't teach about the Constitution, any of that. None of that is taught right now. And what's frightening to me is, and I'm making a generalization here because I'm the new generation coming up right now. I've met some very intellectual and smart ones. But generally speaking, our colleges and universities appear to be, or are demonstrating, that they're teaching people not how to think, but what to think. And the skill set it takes to separate fact from fiction, opinion from fact, fiction, and evidence, it's just not there for a lot of people. And I find these comments made by my friends up here, they see this everywhere. It's very frustrating.
Well, Fred, we appreciate your insights and your call today. Thank you for joining our program.
Well, thank you for taking me. It's an extreme pleasure, and I respect this station and the owner for it. Thank you.
Well,
thank you, Frank.
Fred makes some interesting points because if you'll go back to World War II for a minute, I mentioned the fact that when they bombed Pearl Harbor, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, up to that point we were pretty complacent. We didn't, the American population sort of didn't. Yeah, well, we'll ignore what's going on in Europe.
We were still in the debate.
Yeah,
if we're going to help Europe, right?
But
once they dropped the bombs, and then we were immediately galvanized, and companies like Ford started making airplanes instead of cars and stuff like that. I mean, we came together pretty quickly. I see this whole discussion.
Yeah, but
go ahead, Amy.
But Billy, now it's time changing.
Oh no, I understand that.
They not bomb us. They buy. They bought a lot of things.
Well,
that's the problem. Like we don't mind they buy. They bomb us, of course, right?
No, but see, here's where I was going with my comment here, and you just led me right into it, Amy. rather than being bombed into recognition that we have a problem, right?
Yeah.
We should understand that China can't feed itself, right? We should look at this as an opportunity here in the United States, right? Hey, we could make some money. We'll send some food over to China. If they'll buy as much as we make, pretty soon, you see the point? We could have an economic food war with them and probably win.
Well, think about this. Hey, Amy, you talk about, China didn't bomb us, so you don't see American really rise up against, China trying to buying United States. Well, it's true that China have not bombed us, but however, think about this. God has His plan. We did have this COVID-19 last year. Mm-hmm. And that's why the public opinion, swiftly changed, and so that's why we see this result that China become the biggest
45% enemy.
45%. Mm-hmm. So I think that people will eventually realize, what China has done and it's doing.
Well, I think we are realizing it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but some people they translate. And interpret to the wrong way. They say, okay, China, the virus, and harm us. So they say that China has to pay for it. So they come in to kill all the Asian people, hate crime.
Yeah.
And put it, China pay for it. What is this? So,
Right. Amy, let's take a phone call from Michael, who's calling us from Santa Cruz. Michael, you're on KSCO.
Well, I thank you very much, Billy, for taking my call, and I really enjoyed the show so far today. I just would like to take issue on something you said, Billy, with respect to if China were to declare war on the United States, people would gather around and coalesce and fight together. I would like to argue the fact that I believe China has already declared a war on us. It's just that it doesn't look like a conventional war, because it isn't. It's an unconventional war, and we are not coalescing around that fact yet.
Well, it's because we haven't recognized it yet.
Yes, exactly right. And yet they have been at war with us for quite some time.
Well, Nan, for instance, Nan pointed out just a moment ago that the U.S. opinion is changing about China because of the virus that you could look at as a war on us and the rest of the world. Certainly, the opinion has we're up to 45% of people in the United States think China is the number one threat. I can only point to that and say that we must be changing our mind.
Well, that's what I said as well. We are slowly coming to grips with it, but it is certainly not 100% yet. So,
well, that's true.
Whether we coalesce to the extent we need to or not remains to be seen. But that is the story, and it's
very good point.
Yeah, yesterday I was having a conversation with an old lady in one of the club, and she was asking me the questions after I made a presentation about the COVID and China's moral crisis, and she was still after I talk about the threat from China, she was still asking me the question, say, how do you think China is going to change and Chairman Xi is going to change maybe 15 years from now? You know what? My answer to her was like, I don't think we will have another 15 years to wait to see what happened. Because China, the threat is so real right now, and the threat is so great right now. We can't wait another 15 years to deal with it. And another thing, it's Michael, you just talked about the unconventional war, which was a term which was invented in the late 90s by China's military strategists. Unconventional war. They have been doing that against the United States and Western world ever since the late 90s.
For about 20 years.
Yeah, various fronts.
More than 20 years.
Yeah. But wait a minute. It goes back farther than that, because unconventional warfare, as defined by Sun Tzu in The Art of War, was the way in which Chairman Mao and his young CCP drove out the Kuomintang and won China.
Well, they didn't have that term back in the old times. Chairman Mao and his airlines, that it's really called the United Front Project, and the United Front Project has been always there ever since the CCP established. That's always one of the tactics they try to play to build airlines around their main enemies. Now, unconventional warfare, it's really about the cyber warfare, the cultural warfare,
and economic warfare.
Technology, espionage, so on and so forth. Those things are really was specifically written as a strategy to take down United States. Its purpose was very specific. It's against the United States. As the leader of the Western world.
Yeah, I think Michael means, those things, the theory, the philosophies way back to the 1,000 years ago, this Sun Tzu Bingfa, which was the strategy, for the warfare. So Chinese Maoists studied that. Then
and you can employ the art of war with guns and bullets, or with words and dollars.
And also with computers and the internet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just put the modern content for this old warfare. It's same principle, same philosophy.
Exactly.
Hey, and Mike, what is it that Gorden Chang said? You have to look to the past to find successful ways of doing things.
Yeah, he had some very good comments in our commentary today.
At any rate, great show today. Thank you very, very much.
Michael, thank you for calling. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael. Excellent point.
All right, let's see. We have one more call. Let's talk to Nick in Royal Oaks. Nick, you're on KSCO.
Okay, but the task of being bombed out, got a little drizzle here, and I catch it in the wheelbarrow. The frightening thing is sometimes I get too close to these trees. It's more like I killed it than I gave it life. So I'm just downwind from the sea. How are you? It's so wonderful to hear you. I'm like an imitator, and what I'm about to say is just assuring that it's been said before, and it's hard to say and can be said again. Living in peace is the final goal, and we're all going to be there. Can we live it?
Well, that's actually a good point, Nick. We appreciate the call. Thank you.
It's a good wish.
Yeah, that is a very good wish.
But the problem is, if someone started, what are you going to do?
Yeah, Nick makes a very good point. The entire goal is to live in harmony and peace, and not, look, one of my history teachers told me a long time ago in college. He said, by the time we are at war, we have failed.
Well, that's true, but the problem is if you don't have the strength, the enemy will come find you.
Well, absolutely.
So the greatest way and the best way to prevent a war is you are strong enough.
Well, one of our presidents said it best: talk softly and carry a big stick.
Yep. Yeah, you really have to be strong. If you are not strong, enemy will find you no matter where you are.
Yeah.
That's right, barbarian, the gay.
Yeah. Let's check in with Ed, who's calling us from over the hill in Los Gatos. Hello, Ed.
Yeah, hi. Listen, I always enjoy your programs, and I know that quite a few of my acquaintances do read the Epoch Times. And by the way, your guest, Gorden Chang, I follow him very, very closely. But I just wanted to make just a couple of observations. The difference between regular warfare and basically asymmetrical is a term called kinetic. Kinetic warfare is force on force, sheer violence. Okay, so total war encompasses all of the items that you have already identified. Whether you're attacking the population, you're attacking the economy, you're going cybersecurity, that is considered total war. Okay, so everything is on the table. Now, interestingly enough, Sun Tzu's position was that if you can influence your enemy to the point that he considers pursuit of war is no longer possible or feasible, you've actually won. Okay,
yeah, that's actually true.
Yeah. So when you talk about total war, that encompasses complete destruction, or to the point of degrading your opposition's ability to be able to respond accordingly. So at some point in time, past the Middle Ages and etc., warfare generally is conducted up to a point where that the surviving population essentially can be revived and witness, for example, the Marshall Plan. Witness, for example, the warfare in Asia against Japan, et cetera. Once you turn the public against their leaders, you've now essentially then captured the initiative.
Sure.
So I just wanted to. Now the other part of the last in summation is, this has been ongoing since the time of Mao Zedong, which is basically an extension of beyond the eras when emperors basically were in a complete quandary. China today has to maintain essentially that quoted, I think it's about 3 to 5 million man military position. Most of that is intended to keep security internally, much more so than actually, a force extension. Okay, you mentioned about the aspect of agriculture, of feeding. Yes, I mentioned this, and I think one other conversation I had in your show, probably within the last 45 days, is the fact that China does not want to show the weaknesses that they do have. But if you look at, and they've done a great job of managing this, from Mao Zedong to Deng Xiaoping, et cetera. But if you notice, Xi Jinping has basically assumed that mantra of, emperor for lack of a better term. But the challenge that you have here, even within the Communist Party, over successive periods, there have been going internal battles that have not really been shown to the public between the more moderate aspect of what communism means, bordering on socialism, versus the Marxist position. So these are things that we have to look at and be wary to as we look at the greater aspects of this. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. We appreciate your observation.
Very, very intelligent.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I believe that's what our leaders and the Chinese leaders are facing when they're talking in Anchorage as we speak.
In Alaska today. Yeah, that's quite interesting. One of the things I'm thinking, why do we still want to making this kind of a negotiation? And Gorden Chang actually answered my question, and he said, "Well, our airlines all want it. We just have to do it."
Yeah.
But no one is really expecting there will be any constructive results,
any substantive talking at all.
Basically, it's like an exercise in futility, right?
Yeah, that's a very good phrase that applies to this particular situation we have going on in Alaska today. It is basically because neither side is willing to budge. It's basically an exercise in futility. And I think Amy makes a really good point here. The same point that Mr. Chang made, and actually I think the same point that our Secretary of State sort of made when he said we're going to continue the current policy of the past administration because we don't see any point in giving in.
Another thing that Gorden Chang talked about is because our current administration already confirmed the genocide.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Genocide in Xinjiang area against the Uyghurs, and then we have to abide the 1948 whatever the UN Convention against the genocide.
Yeah. All right, Homeless Joe's called. Let's check in with him. Thank you for calling China Uber Alice today.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
This is Homeless Joe. I'm calling from Santa Cruz. China is a huge country. Why? Let's see, how could I say this? Okay, it's a huge country. There's a lot of land. I don't understand why they can't not cultivate their own food. I mean, is there an irrigation problem?
They have multiple problems. No. Joe, they have multiple problems.
No, they basically give it up when the Jiang Zemin became a president. He said that we're going to build the city first. And then we can have money, and we can export the goods, whatever, factories, manufacturing products, so we have money to buy all the food. Why should we do agriculture? We cannot sell very little money. So that's why changing the policy.
Yes, Amy was right, and Joe, let me give an answer from a little different angle. Now,
well, the only reason I'm saying this because I can feel, hungry people. I mean, you got a lot of land. I mean, what's the problem?
Well, China's the cultivation, it's in a very limited area. A lot of areas they grows nothing.
Yeah, it's a big country, but not too much arable land.
That's right, and also in the past ever since 1989, in the past almost 30 years, Chinese communist regime has been really in this big push for urbanization. So they really push their population to change from farmers' population to the people living in the small towns. And they believe this kind of a change will create a much greater GDP. They really look at the GDP increase every year as the only mean to prove the legitimacy of the Communist Party's ruling power.
And there's one other thing we have to consider. You notice that the United States is a fairly big country, but we have a lot of farmers. A lot of our land, even Minnesota and places that are under snow for a good portion of the year, when they do produce a lot. But the one other thing you have to remember is we have 330 million people living in the United States. China has 1.4 billion mouths to feed.
And also that in China, we already talk about they have a limited land to grow the food, right?
Yes.
And you know, if you look at the past 70 years, comparing with United States, here you look at Central California.
Look at Santa Cruz County. That's all you got to do.
Well, you just look at the Central California when you drove on the Highway 1. Miles of land, and they rotate, you know, so they grow fruit from one piece of land. The next year they will leave this land to take a rest, and then they will grow from another piece of land. In China, they don't have that kind of luxury. They try to grow as many times, like they will grow sometimes the rice twice a year or 3 times a year. So that's what the kind of the usage of their land.
Okay, you've got lots of land, but I'm sure where it's difficult to grow plants or whatever, I'm sure there's fruits or vegetables that maybe potatoes that can grow in a certain area.
Yeah. I think it's a will to do it sort of thing, in addition to having a shortage of land and too many people to feed all at once. I think it's a combination. The answer to your question, Joe, is it's several reasons, but China's not.
Policy is the main issue.
It's policy is the main
reason. Yeah. They don't do the subsidize like America.
So what you're saying that they have good land, but they're just not cultivating?
They have some good land, not enough, and they're not willing to cultivate it. They just want to buy the food from another country is basically the answer.
That is pretty much correct, because all the provinces along, especially the provinces along the coastal line, those the provinces they have the very good land to make their farm, but those provinces are all urbanized, and they all trying to bring industry in those provinces. That's why they really have facing the big shortages of food.
Joe, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. We got a bunch of people on the line here. Let's go to. We have somebody calling from. This can't be correct. Is that correct? Delaware, the state of Delaware. Well, I got to take this call. Joe from Delaware. You're on China Uber Alice. Is that correct? You're in Delaware.
Well, that's where I'm from.
Okay.
But China, eat our lunch. Come on, man. They're not our competition. They're our benefactor. My son, what's his name, Hunter, he's made millions with China, and I get some too. Here's the deal, man. Here's the deal. I got a deal with Xinjiang, whatever his name is. I can say all bad things about him, and it don't matter. If he knows it, just to keep the Proud Boys happy. But as long as I give him what he wants, there's no problem, man. China, no problem. Come on, man.
So you mean your son Hunter get a lot of money from China?
He's got hundreds of millions. He got billions, and I get 10%.
Well, let's hope it holds up for you there. Thanks for calling, Joe, and say hi to the 2 dogs for me, will you? All right. you got to say hi to the dogs, right? They got out of the doghouse and they've headed back to the big house now.
Oh, okay.
All right. So let's check in. Let's check in with Bill. Hey, there's one in every radio show, at least. Let's check in with Bill, who's calling us from Monterey. Bill, you're on China Uber House.
Billy.
Hello, Bill. You there?
Yeah, who, me?
Yeah, you.
Well, my name's not Bill. It's Phil.
Phil. I'm sorry. Well, it says Bill on my board. I'm sorry.
Just a quick thing. I think it's a poor excuse by China, and here's why. We have developed ways, not just traditional farming here, but non-traditional farming, where we can use train crates to grow food inside buildings.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
One of our talk show hosts here, Michael Olson, he was talking about some of the people using the buildings like as a garden.
Yeah, absolutely.
To grow food.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's
that
actually...
way you don't have to worry about weather. Weather's not a factor then. You have an enclosure where food can be grown all year long. And it's something that I've been following up. And here's another thing. If cultivation is such a big problem for the Chinese, and I'm kind of finding it hard to believe that some of these people out here don't want to be farmers and make money that way.
Oh, well, it was the Chinese regime's policy, because in the last 30 years, the Chinese communist regime's leader have believed that the only way to prove the legitimacy of their ruling power is to create huge GDP growth. So GDP is the biggest thing in their eyes. So in order to do that, obviously, farming, it's not something you can, constantly increase your GDP by doing that. So they have to try to make industrialization of the provinces, and it just happened. If you go to China, you will see the northern western part of the China. You can. It's pretty much a desert. So the provinces along the eastern part, along the coastal provinces, those are the provinces with a lot of land, really good for farming. But those, if you go to China today, as the result of last 30 years of industrialization, not much land left for them to farm.
It would be like in the United States if the United States government said, well, we're really not encouraging farming anymore. We're encouraging other industries that will increase our gross national product much faster. That's right. What's happened in China.
Yeah. Actually, after Mao died, the Deng Xiaoping became a president, and the chairman. That time, and actually first was try to develop in the countryside. He said let the farmer getting rich first. So that time the standard is only 10,000 yuan, so you become rich. So they give back the land to the farmer and let them to cultivate. So all of a sudden, I lived there for 30 years. It was very poor and no food at all. All of a sudden, the first, after Mao died, first 10 years, all of a sudden you see all the food. You were surprised where the food come from. How come before don't have any? So the politics changed.
Exactly.
But after Jiang Zemin become a chairman and changing. So he's just developing the Shanghai become the world's financial center or something. So that's what the whole game changing.
Yeah.
So that's man said about GDP. So they just go for those kind of things.
Let's go to another call. Gary in Live Oak wants to talk about George Marshall and the Marshall Plan. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I think it's really interesting that it's the American papers and the communist press that brought in Mao as an agrarian reformer. And, of course, we saw the Ukraine, which was a breadbasket of Europe. Once it was under centralized communist power, There is no incentive. In fact, communism doesn't work anywhere. That should be plain and clear, and it's used as a tool to both kill and cull the people. Now, George Marshall himself, it was the Americans, again, the same people like Rockefeller and so forth that claim Red China's communist revolution is the most successful and praised it, was supporting Institute of Pacific Relations, which was attacking Chiang Kai-shek, promoting Mao. George Marshall boasted that he had disarmed 39 of Chang's divisions with the stroke of a pen, and they didn't even get ammunition for the guns they did have. And you find the same situation with Cuba. You know, Castro was supposed to be the Robin Hood of Cuba, and that's what I was taught from a political science teacher in the so-called Republican LA Times. But what's happened here is their deceitfulness of communism. Virtually every campus in the United States is now a broadcasting or a captured area that is teaching Marxism. And locally, we've got AMBAG, Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, which is no more than a Soviet, headed by somebody that received $30,000 from the Red Chinese. We got our intelligence operation with Eric Swalwell receiving me, of which Pelosi just sent. And we've got the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Dianne Feinstein, with her Russell Lowe. We are heavily infiltrated. We are being sabotaged by a fifth column. Again, it was the West that trained Pol Pot in France. It was Ho Chi Minh that was saved by the OSF. And Mao was trained and he taught for Yale in China, which is connected with the Skull and Bone Central Intelligence Agency, such as Bush and Kerry and the boys. But anyway, George Marshall is no friend of ours. He was in charge of the Marshall Plan, which was sold as anti-communist, but it was really to create a region for a one-world government. And he destroyed as many anti-communist organizations as communist organizations in order to create the European Union. The same thing is going on with the COGS, Councils of Government here in the United States, which are no more than Soviets, with the newspapers participating in the destruction of the United States.
Well, Gary, thanks for the call. I got one more call I want to try to get on before we end the show today. Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's move on to John in Capitola. You're on China Uber Alice.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I'm a little. I have a couple of concerns with the topic that you guys are addressing right now. Excuse me if I'm hijacking. I don't mean to hijack your conversation, but there's one thing is I have heard no mention of Russia and how it has been a big threat to us most recently. And I do agree that China is a big threat too, but I would like to see them both equally.
We actually did talk about Russia. Actually, in the beginning of this hour, the fact that there was a recent poll done that shows that Americans think the number one threat to the United States is China.
45%.
40. What did I say? 55. 45%,
and Russia is 26.
Russia is considered a very big threat to us still. If you'll remember in the news, I believe it was last night, a big story about the fact that our very own president, the new president, basically picked a fight with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah. Yeah, well, keep in mind, Russia, the total economic power of Russia is probably less than 1/10 of China's. So therefore, if you want to, think about who have a much bigger capacity to make the threat to the United States, you can't say Russia is number one, but China is definitely number one. While I think Americans are very smart, they pick Russia as a biggest threat. 26% of the Americans pick Russia as the biggest threat.
But John, we do understand your concern, because I don't think anybody's writing off Russia as a threat. But certainly the focus of this particular program is to try to point out that the Chinese Communist Party is certainly something we want to look out for.
Well, I apologize again. You must have covered that while I was in my aqua therapy, and I came in the middle of the conversation, so I apologize.
Oh, that's fine.
That's fine.
Keep listening. We'd love to have you call back.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. We are, once again, I find it fascinating that we just get going in a great conversation and we run out of time. Hang on, Amy, and Nan will be back after this break to conclude our program for today. China Über Alles is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito, coming soon to the Capitola Mall Food Court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum!
This is Bill Lambert of Lambert & Son Moving and Storage. Lambert & Son Moving has been serving Santa Cruz County and the Central Coast since 2005. Call 831-420-0419. Our very experienced, highly trained staff can handle all your residential and commercial moving and storage needs. Highly trained crews for packing fine china, crystal, and artwork. Our crews practice all COVID-19 safety protocols, including wearing masks, hand sanitizing, and social distancing. We also sanitize our trucks every morning. We offer very secure, full-service storage at our Santa Cruz facility. Our crews are experienced with grand pianos, grandfather clocks, large safes, fitness equipment, adjustable beds, office cubicles, and any other item for your residential or commercial move. Local and long distance, short and long-term storage. Mention KSCO for a free month storage. Call 831-420-0419 for all your moving and storage needs.
When you need legal help, call on the Angel. It's a fact. We'll all need help to resolve a legal matter of one kind or another. When you find yourself in need of legal help, call on Angel Hess Attorney at Law. She's been helping people with legal documents for over 20 years. Now Angel has earned her master's in legal studies and Juris Doctorate and is licensed to practice law for you.
I'm Angel L. Hess, Attorney at Law. With my help, we can resolve your legal matters quickly and efficiently. I will listen to your needs and keep you informed of the pros and cons of each legal strategy. We will find the best course of action for you. And if I can't help you, then I will help you find someone who can.
And today, Angel Hess has an angelic offer for each of you KSCO listeners, and only you KSCO listeners. A free half-hour consultation. That's right. Just pick up the phone and call her with your legal matter, mention KSCO, and get your free consultation today. When you find yourself in need of legal help, call on Angel L. Hess, Attorney at Law in Santa Cruz at 831-426-8536 or www.santacruzlegal.net.
Satisfy your hunger with a fresh, prepared, twice daily grab-and-go sushi you'll find waiting for you at Sushi Market Sprouts, 2 blocks from the beach at 300 7th Avenue in Santa Cruz. Fresh, delicious, and oh so good.
Hello, I'm Junko, and I look forward to serving you at the Sushi Market Sprouts.
Well, I'm looking forward to the third installment of Amy's current story in our next program to start things off. Amy, I look forward to hearing how this is going to end up.
Yeah, keep in mind when we talk about China, it's it's in shortage of food. It's on that part of information, based on my understanding, only make China more dangerous to the world because they are going to grab the food from someone else.
Yeah, they're gonna try to take it, or economically or otherwise. Yeah. Anyway, that's our program. Amy, thank you so much for leading us into our discussion today. I want to thank our guest, Gorden Chang, for being with us, and of course, Nan, as always, your expertise is valuable. This is KSCO Santa Cruz.